Alright, Lakshmi is practicing her hammer throws. Her coach tells her that the angle at which she releases the hammer is 40 degrees to her left, and the distance that she throws the hammer to, point C, is equal to 20 meters. The official is standing at point B as shown in the diagram below. What is the value of C? An example, the distance between Lakshmi and the official. The value of C is blank meters. Enter the value that fills in the blank in the previous sentence. Round your answer to 2 decimal places like this. Okay, so the first thing that I'm noticing is we're finding a side length. We're finding this side length right here. And like I had said earlier, there are 2 tools you can use when you have a right triangle. You can use the Pythagorean theorem. So it has to be a right triangle, and you have to be solving for one missing side length. And actually, let's just do this. To solve for a missing side length in a triangle. Well, Pythagorean theorem, it has to be a right triangle, and you have to have 2 of the side lengths known. So if we look here, we only have one side length, which is 20 meters. We do not have the length of BC, and we don't have this length B to L, because that's what we're trying to find. So Pythagorean theorem is not going to work. They introduced you in this lesson to the trig functions or trigonometric functions. They require a right triangle and one angle besides the 90-degree angle and one side length. So if I look at this, I have my 90-degree angle, so it's a right triangle. Check. One angle besides the 90-degree angle. It's marked as 40 degrees. Check. And one side length is 20 meters. Alright, so now we're going to be using the trig functions. So we know that they are sine of an angle is equal to the opposite side length divided by the hypotenuse side length. And I'm going to make that smaller so that it'll fit hypotenuse side length. And then the cosine is the cosine of the angle is actually the adjacent side length divided by the hypotenuse side length. And there's one more that you'll be introduced later to. I'm introducing it right now because I want to teach you a mnemonic device on how to remember this. So the tangent is actually the opposite side length divided by the adjacent side length. I'm really struggling typing today, sorry. Adjacent. So the mnemonic device I want to teach you is called SOHCAHTOA. Whoops, that is supposed to be an H. SOHCAHTOA. Alright, this S stands for sine, this O stands for opposite, and that H stands for hypotenuse. So there's so. Ka, the C stands for cosine, the A stands for adjacent, and the H stands for hypotenuse. So there's ka. And then toa, the T stands for tangent, the O stands for opposite, and the A stands for the adjacent. So there's SOHCAHTOA to help you remember the sine trig functions. So going back, we're going to decide what we're going to use, either sine or cosine, because that's what you were introduced to in this lesson. So always pick your angle. Now the angle that was given is this 40-degree angle, so that's going to be our perspective. So you can draw a little eyeball on there if you want to, or if it creeps you out, just remember that this is the angle of our perspective. So we have sine of 40 degrees and cosine of 40 degrees. Alright, so now we're going to label it. The easiest side to label is the hypotenuse because it's always going to be across from the 90-degree angle. So that side length is the hypotenuse. The next one for me that's easiest to label is the one directly across from the angle. So if you go directly across from 40 degrees, this side length, BC, is the opposite. And then this last one is the adjacent. So now we're just going to substitute in the opposite side length. We do not know, but we know it's BC, the distance of BC, and the hypotenuse side length is 20 meters. And then the cosine of 40 degrees is equal to the adjacent side length, which is represented as little c, and we have the hypotenuse, which is represented as 20 meters. So on this, we're asked to find little c. So if you look at either of these, the only one that has little c in it is cosine of 40. So that's the one we're going to use. So to solve this, we have cosine of 40 is equal to c divided by 20. So since I'm solving for this c and it is in the numerator, it's being divided by 20, I know that if I multiplied both sides by 20, that reduces it out because 20 divided by 20 reduces down to a 1. So I would be left with c on this side and 20 times cosine of 40 there. So then I'd jump over to a calculator and type in 20 times cosine of 40. And see how it has that degree symbol, so I know that it's in degrees. So this comes out to be 15.320. They did say to round to 2 decimal places. Since that's a 0, I'm not going to change that too. So it's 15.32. So in our answer, we would type in 15.32.